everybody. Welcome to this session on The Future is Now. And good day or good afternoon to whichever time zone that you are in. And we're looking forward to have a very lively and interactive session as we go forward. And we have a very distinguished panel here to add their thoughts and ideas on this topic. I think
Sushanto, your voice is coming very faint. Can you move closer to your...
Right.
Yeah.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Right. So the topic is about what is the next big thing, and all of us in the startup ecosystem or in the tech business, all of us have been trying to figure out for how many years what the next big thing is. And each one of us thinks that a particular sector will do well, or a particular market will do well. But the truth is that nobody really knows. And usually not just one particular sector, but multiple sectors do well in a particular year or in a particular time period. So without wasting much time, I will start with Anju. If you can just introduce yourself, and then we'll do that for the rest of the team. Over to you, Anju.
Sure. Hi, welcome everybody. Great to be here at this Pan IIT event and engaging with everybody who's watching. I'm a grad from IIT Delhi 93, one of the few women civil engineers. Now I hope there are a lot more of us. I did my master's and PhD from Stanford in earthquake engineering, then worked in the financial risk industry in the US for about 18 years, moved back to India. Most recently, I have been working with IVCAP Ventures and working with the global alumni network with early stage entrepreneurs, helping them grow, helping them scale their business, building the ecosystem around corporates, accelerators, incubators, and just trying to leverage the alumni network to get everybody together and really learn along the way myself and help each other kind of grow and, help entrepreneurs succeed. And, I'm looking forward to a really good discussion today. Thank you so much, Sushanto.
Thank you, Anju. Ravi, would you like to share a little intro? Ravi, you're mute.
Yeah, yes. Hi everyone. Good afternoon and good evening to others that are listening from across the world. So I have been an entrepreneur pretty much all my career. I started building companies in the US, decided to move back to India sometime in the early 2000s, and became an investor at that time, tried to build a third startup in India, and that didn't go very far. So I realized that the need for building an ecosystem around startups to really thrive in India is absolutely essential. So started working on building that ecosystem here in Bangalore for the last 15 years. And as you can see, Bangalore is amongst the top 30 startup ecosystems in the world. So somewhere along the way, I also got into helping Microsoft to build out their startup program. So, it's one thing to do a lot of good work to help startups build themselves to the next level, become much more efficient, much more scalable, and so on and so forth. But the real demand for these startups can come from corporate clients, and unleashing that or unlocking that opportunity for the startups, creating the demand for the startups was the mantra for what I did at Microsoft. And eventually, now I'm working very closely with the state of Telangana and Hyderabad, the city of Hyderabad. So I'm the CEO of this organization called T-Hub. I'll tell you more about it as we go along, but I'm also the Chief Innovation Officer for the state. So helping the entire state becoming more innovative, more startup-y, as we go along. So that's my story.
Kiran, would you like to share your introduction?
Hi, I'm Kiran Tota. I graduated from IIT Guwahati in the second batch, so it kind of was like a startup experience already there. And then as part of the alumni association, I served as the vice president and president, and I was one of the founding members of Pan IIT USA and joined the Pan IIT Global. So I've served the last about 2 decades in the volunteering business, but then. The other side of me is I'm also a technologist. I spent a lot of time in virtualization, cloud, containerization, and I'm a big fan of infrastructure. So I'd like to share some ideas on what are the next big things in the infra space that's going to rock in the next few years. That's for me.
PG, of course, you don't need any introduction to the IIT forums or any forum really with the startup ecosystem, but we'll still insist that you introduce yourself.
So thank you very much, Sushanto. Pradeep Gupta. I started cyber media way back in 1982, DataQuest, PCQuest, Voice and Data, various other tech publications. Got involved with Pan IIT, was amongst the founding team here in India. Was the chair of Pan IIT, worked very closely with Kiran at that time. I am also the founder of Indian Angel Network. Also one of the early guys who started TIE here in India. And I was a global trustee of TIE, of course, president of TIE Delhi. I mentored a lot of startups. More than 250 startups would have been mentored by me. So that's sort of a short few words.
Thank you. You forgot to mention Sign, where you also helped us to build the incubator. So, of course, you've mentored a lot of people. So, a little background about myself. I was in consulting and financial services, and then I had the opportunity to work at IIT Bombay running the incubator called Sign. And that was quite an experience for a non-techie, and I guess I'm the only non-techie on this platform, on this panel today. So it was amazing working there with the best minds. Of course, we always believe that IIT Bombay is a little better than the rest of you guys. But yes, of course, and we had the support of people like PG and so many other people who supported the incubator. And after spending 5 years at the incubator, along with a professor and a student of IIT Bombay, I started Lead Angels, which essentially is what it's really started off is as a sort of forum for IIT entrepreneurs to showcase their startups. But over a period of time, Lead Angels has grown to be an angel network. We also have a advisory arm which helps companies to raise institutional funding. We have an arm which helps, a division rather, which helps very early stage startups to conceptualize and their startup, and through an educational program, and we call it Lead Angels Academy, incidentally run by Professor Amarnath and Professor Dhruvnath. Professor Amarnath was a professor at IIT Bombay, and Professor Dhruvnath was a professor at MDI Gurgaon, also from IIT Delhi. And we have a sort of management and professional services arm, which helps companies in the statutory sort of compliance stuff. So in a way, it is a one-stop shop for early stage startups, and I'm sure Anju will have a lot to talk about as we go forward. But coming to specifically on the topic, I would like each one of you to share what you think the next big thing is going to be, and maybe in about 5 to 6 minutes, and then we can, of course, talk about other things. So, starting with you, Pradeep, what do you think is the next big thing?
Sure. So, as far as I am concerned, the next big thing is going to be built around deep tech. And there is a reason why I say that. The events of the last 1 year, the pandemic and so on, have clearly accelerated technology. And that acceleration of technology has been in terms of changing the mindset. I think that is the biggest change that has happened. A year back, if somebody had said that can work from home happen, people would have raised hundreds of objections, and came the pandemic and everybody was working from home. So a lot of these blocks against technology were actually in our minds. And I think over the last 12 months, this is something that has completely changed. And therefore, what I see is that there has been a huge amount of acceptance that one has been seeing in the last 6-8 months about various things which are to do with deep technology. And deep technology is going to become absolutely ubiquitous. It is going to start impacting each and every industry. You look at manufacturing, and there will be people who will be looking for what are the contactless solutions there. You name any industry. You look at education, the way that is transforming, healthcare, the way healthcare is transforming. Every industry is getting transformed because of various deep technology solutions which are built around AR, VR, about AI, machine learning, all the sensors, IoT, and so on. So all of that thing is coming together. We were very pleasantly surprised in DataQuest. We conducted in September a deep tech virtual event. We were absolutely amazed at the kind of response that we had. Almost about 20 associations aligned with us to be part of that entire deep tech forum. There were about 100 speakers. There were some 40 sessions. There were some 30 companies that we ended up showcasing, and 4,000 people attended. Now, it is the sort of a thing which I have seen only 3 or 4 times in my entire life. The earlier days when software came in, computers came in, PCs were coming in, and therefore PCs becoming a solution for everything and becoming ubiquitous. That was one sort of a wave that I saw transforming businesses. I saw a similar thing when mobile phones moved center stage, and each and everything was getting transformed because of the way internet and mobility was transforming each and every business. I see a similar thing happening with deep tech. Over the next 10 years, we will find that increasingly all of this, as I said earlier, it will become ubiquitous. You will have solutions coming in each and every area. Different pieces of technologies will be coming together to ensure, that there is remote working, there is data analytics, there is, blockchain, there is various kind of things which are transforming each and every line of industry. So I think that is the big change that we are witnessing, and that is something that startups should focus on. They should pick up what the use cases for those technologies are going to be, and they should be working in terms of trying to make a complete change in those industries. A change, the last change in each and every industry happened because of mobility and internet, let's say, over the last decade. In the next in the next decade, a similar kind of a change will also happen. So that's what I would just like to say as a starting point.
Thanks a lot, PG. And moving ahead, Anju, you're sort of closely associated with the startup ecosystem here. So what, in your view, is the sector that you think is going to do well and is the next big thing? And if you could share your thoughts on that.
Sure. I'll start by just adding to what Pradeep was talking about. He talked about technology and deep tech and that being the center of everything. I think in addition to that, we're also starting to see and will continue to see, a new type of entrepreneur who actually is understanding how to, leverage this deep tech, not only to build solutions, but also to reach out to, the customers and how to kind of build their business. And I think at the core of that is, I'm loosely calling it, it covers a very broad area, but, the whole education sector. Obviously, we've seen a big change, in the last year about from school to college, about how education happens. And I think where there is still a lot of scope is how we are using technology to reach out education to more students. We've seen how startups, in computers and computer education have suddenly gone big. So I think using technology, one, to reach a broader audience of students that, just didn't have access. I think leveraging technologies such as, AI, VR to kind of fine tune education to help building skills, making that more flexible. I think, helping technology to train, our teachers. One of the things we've always struggled with is how to get good educators, across India in different areas. Now this technology is actually going to enable that, help the students and teachers, have a broader outreach, have people, share their experience out with a broader scope. So I think that is really a good area. One of the things we've always seen, when we look at early stage entrepreneurs is, the lack, especially, even if I look at, the engineering schools, look at, myself coming out of the IIT, this is soft skills that we haven't really kind of focused on. And I think now with how things are with this technology, with this remote learning, there's a tremendous opportunity to really help people, build up that skill set. So I think overall, the whole education sector, has opened up a lot of different opportunities, a new way of teaching, a new way of learning, a broader outreach, bringing out, leveraging this technology to learn like a whole wide set of skill sets. I think that's one whole area where I think there is, a lot of scope. And I think they're both sides of it. It's not, like I said, only the technology and the solution, but also the entrepreneurs. And I think the young entrepreneurs that we deal a lot with are also going to have to be smart about, how they're learning, new ways to kind of grow, new ways to help kind of validate their solutions, new ways to reach out to customers, new ways to do, product market validation. And, we're talking about, actually, how to take steps towards the next great idea. And I think ecosystems like ours are ways, and Ravi's going to talk about that more, are ways that can really help, scale this out in a big way, help provide those kind of baby steps. A lot of times, when you look at tier 2, tier 3 cities, we've always heard, it's really hard to get, entrepreneurs exposures to good mentors, good investors. And I think linking back to what Pradeep is saying, this deep tech and technology, I think has just opened up kind of the whole ecosystem. Another big kind of group of entrepreneurs, that has started coming out is, women working from home. That was a big sector, women who've been kind of out of the workforce for a while. I think all of these things provide, great opportunities for startups to think about how to put all this together and really leverage kind of technology towards education, right from the ground up, both in terms of outreach, how they're providing it, and kind of how they would customize it. So that's kind of my kind of, thoughts on this.
Thanks so much, Anju. I can relate to this because we were also doing, a lot like all other people in the ecosystem, doing offline entrepreneurship training courses at different education institutions. And we converted ourselves into an online program. And that really enabled us to reach a lot more people that we could do than in the past. Over to you, Kiran, and you're sitting at the right place, in the hub of the Silicon Valley. So if you can tell us about what do you think are the next things?
So what I observed in the last couple of years that's happening is most of the adoption has grown from enterprise-based software to cloud software. If you look at, we are using Zoom as against a WebEx or something like that. So we have seen a radical shift of thought from using a hosted software model to a cloud software model, and things are really booming there. So I'm sure that cloud is allowing a large number of new entrepreneurs to develop their software quickly, become more productive, and automate their work so that they can be a lot more productive. And that is creating a lot of value for the companies, and also it's also being leveraged for schools. For example, my kids are currently doing distance learning, like, remote schools. Even though school is maybe half to a mile away, they are all, due to COVID, the schools are closed right now, and we are doing distance learning. Even the kids, second graders, third graders, are supposed to use cloud-based software to do it. So what I've observed is there's a lot of data that's going on the cloud, etc. So the infra play there is going to be huge. A lot of data getting collected, a lot of things are happening, and people are using a lot of hyper local kind of software like Instacart or Big Basket in India, right, to actually do groceries. So what I had observed is not only are the new technology paradigms like AI, VR, etc., but new market segments are getting a lot more mature. For example, in the last 6 months, most of the people are only purchasing through either online shopping like Amazon, or using a local shopping retailer like Instacart. So that's creating a lot new technology paradigms, and trying to create new businesses, growing the businesses much bigger. And I think it's actually going to a stage where I think that's going to be the new norm for the people. And what is happening is, with the heavy investments happening in these sectors, we are seeing most of the value add being at the top layers, and all the bottom layers of the software that were developed by these big companies are becoming open source. So that actually paves way for next breed of investors and entrepreneurs to actually quickly look at it and say, hey, this is a new product that I can build for a different market, and they can go build it.
Thanks, Kiran. And moving on to you, Ravi. You've seen PG, Anju, and Kiran talk about their areas. You come from the startup ecosystem, so as to speak here. So, what is your view on this?
Great. Thanks, Shanto. So you mentioned something about the best IIT or something like that. So I forgot to tell you that I'm from IIT Madras.
No, so I said I'm the only one who's not from the IITs. No.
Okay. Anyway, so yeah,
No,
so I told you a little bit about my.
Delhi and IIT Bombay, nothing to do with any other IITs.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so so I'll take a little bit of an ecosystem view, because I think a lot of the work that has been done in the last several years around startups has been around startup ecosystem. I think this trend evolved, from the Valley and various other places where we saw that if there is a geographical proximity for the investors for the customers, the startups, and the mentors, and so on and so forth, suddenly, magical things happen. And this is something that, when I came back to India and wanted to do something here, I saw that, the fact that all the metros that we were looking to bank on, the Mumbai, the Delhi, Bangalore, were so far apart geographically, and we did not have a critical mass in any one of these cities to actually really garner that kind of critical mass. So what is it that we could do differently is what I think the ecosystem question was all about. But I think since then, we actually have seen that these three cities are doing extremely well in terms of building the startup ecosystem as we know it. But I think also what you're beginning to see are four new trends. One trend is the fact that these cities are slowly but surely beginning to garner less interest from startups, from investors. 5 to 7% of investments now go from away from these cities into smaller cities, into even tier 3, tier 4 kind of cities as well across India. So it's a very interesting trend that we are seeing. The second trend that we are seeing is the fact that uh, while there has been a laser focus on tech startups as the way to really measure our successes, right? Tech startups, be it B2B or B2C. I think you're also seeing that there are a whole lot of social impact startups that are beginning to take shape. And to consider them as a part of the ecosystem rather than another different ecosystem altogether is an important trend that's emerging. Yes, there may be different mentors, different investors, different incubators for it altogether, but at the same time, they all play a very, very vital role in where India is going to emerge. Because I think the tech startups will probably address maybe 15% of the opportunities that are presented to them in India. There are probably another 25 to 30% of those opportunities that will not be either profitable or scalable. So that is out of the question for a startup to take on. So there's a large, very large, um, opportunity for others who are profitable startups, but not necessarily driven by the kind of scale that VC would get interested by, but they are absolutely important to address a whole lot of issues that are happening within India. So that is the second trend, is the social innovation, social impact that we are beginning to see. While the tech startups continue to gravitate to metros, uh, uh, and some of them are also going away, but I think the social is also beginning to happen much more broadly across non-metros as well. And the third one is the fact, what I think PG already alluded to, is the fact that the embrace of technologies among the Indian ecosystem, the Indian country as a whole, has been much more, um, I think, inviting than most others. I think there is a lot of incumbency in some of the other ecosystems across the world, especially the Western world, where moving from one cell phone to another means that there's so much of what is that, LNP, and all that. There's so much that has to happen. But the fact that people are able to first of all take on smartphones with the rapidity that they did, and the fact that data penetration, internet penetration continues to grow despite all the things that are happening, and being able to use WhatsApp to do your normal business and so easily and so quickly, I think is also a pointer to the fact that technology is not necessarily one that's going to stop people. It's going to actually make them much more connected and much more involved in embracing new innovations that are going to come their way. And the last one I would like to talk about is the fact that there is uh, a good infrastructure of data that is being created through the works of Aadhaar and digital identity and payment gateways, a payment infrastructure. Now there's a health infrastructure that's being talked about, and so on and so forth. I think the building this kind of infrastructure for public goods is something that is, and at the scale that it is being built, I think is a story that's not necessarily well known for startups that are not in India, and looking at India as some place where it's very difficult to do business. But these are some of the things that make it easier for them. So these four trends have always already been emerging even before the pandemic. But I think with the pandemic, suddenly this has become even more apparent, and even more clear that while we may have built India as in the third largest ecosystem, or something of that nature, I think, and that too in a very a short period of time. I think what we're beginning to see now is the fact that it will only grow even faster because of the fact that we are presented with so many opportunities for startups to, go solve. And because we have already spent about 15, 16 years in the startup evolution, and there are multiple, what do you say, expert entrepreneurs or people who have been there, done that, now coming back in either as investors or repeat entrepreneurs or parallel entrepreneurs as well. You're beginning to see something that's not very much known, and that's the reason I wanted to spend this time, because if there are people that are watching this from the US thinking India, whether they should dip their toes in India or not, I think this is the most opportune time to do a lot more here than ever before. So the next
Right.
big thing for me is that the way these ecosystems are going to build out are going to be nothing as people have seen anywhere else in the world, and we are going to set a very different trend in how we are going to build ecosystems across the cities, across states, and completely enabled by technology and data.
Thanks, Ravi. Yeah, that was very interesting. And as we sort of approach the halfway mark of our time, I think we are doing well on time. So that's one good thing. And audience, please do share your questions. And with the panel, we are waiting to answer all your questions. And we've kept aside a fair amount of time for questions from you. Coming back to what all of us said, is that the pandemic, as as PG said from at the start, has really changed and accelerated all the technology forces, and a lot of the sort of reservations was only in the mind, and that has gone, or as they say, necessity is the mother of new thinking or invention. That's how all of us have been, and trying out new things, and across generations is the general adoption of technology, whether it is education and related areas, as Anju said, or the as Ravi talked about, as Kiran talked about, the cloud, and so on and so forth. And yes, we will see new trends in the entrepreneurial ecosystem too. Yes, the big cities, the metros will continue, but yeah, because distance is becoming somewhat, or location is becoming somewhat irrelevant in the new world. Um, uh, that will also change going forward. Since I'm also supposed to talk about a topic, I'm going to try and be safe and talk about a topic away from technology, which is somewhat to do with technology, but is about food. So food is something which is very basic in our lives, and what the pandemic has shown is that over focus on commercial agriculture, especially leading to livestock farming, and this whole Western world consumption of meat and meat related dairy is causing a lot of burning down forests, causing a lot of global warming, and also affecting our health. So it's this whole movement towards commercialized animal and dairy farming has caused a lot of problems to this world. And one of the ways in which this is changing is a sort of refocus on plant-based sort of proteins and plant-based foods. And we are seeing we are seeing that trend in the West in a very big way. I think this is a market which is about 12, $13 billion, growing at about 15% CAGR, but that doesn't really tell the whole story. But the story that we see that a lot of new products, technologies, and stuff are getting involved as more and more people are becoming aware of the environmental damage that animal sort of proteins do to this and commercialization does to this world are changing, if not entirely, but towards having more plant-based food, and that will sort of be another trend, I think, in the next few years that will impact all our lives and hopefully for the betterment of the environment that we live in. Going forward, I think all of you have very well defined what you think the next best thing would be. But next question is, like we all did in college, heard a lot of good things, but what is in it for us? How do we as students or alumni of IIT or investors really make use of all the gyan that you guys have given us? So, starting with you, Kiran, and you're the closest, right, I believe, to being from college, at least in this row, right? So, what is your advice to an entrepreneur, and in your case, both in the US and in India, about working on the stuff that you spoke about cloud technology and so on, or somebody who wants to invest in this space, or somebody is just looking at job opportunities in this space? So briefly, if you could share in about 2 minutes, what is your advice to them? And I'm going to come to everybody, each one of you.
So in the past decade, the decade before, if you had to build a product and actually do a POC and show it to customers, it would cost you tens of thousands of dollars, right? If you use cloud, it's a pay-as-you-go model. You could build a POC very quickly and probably cheaply because of the free credits that are available for many people, and then you can actually prove your thing. So the MVP is coming at nominal cost. So what happens is the cost of failure is not high on the initial investment perspective. So this gives an opportunity for entrepreneurs to keep trying. And let's look at the velocity of development. Because of the stacks that are available right there, nobody needs to write a large amount of code. They can actually take available pieces, glue it together, prove a concept, and do it. For example, a kid in middle school to high school, they themselves are able to build some end-to-end products together and then do it as part of the project. So this is actually allowing people to experiment a lot, vet it out, and then do it. So what happens is the business traction is what the investors will start looking at. Entrepreneur also sees, hey, how much am I going to make on this? What can I price? So the focus from technology is moving on to the business side of things. How much viable this is, how many people are going to use it, etc. Right? Essentially, businesses are about making money and how many customers you are going to have. Now, coming back to how individuals can use it, this is exactly where the gap is. What happens is the new breed of graduates are actually already familiar with these technologies. What I've seen is, because I also was the president of Pan IIT, I was actually interacting with young and old alums. And what I've seen is this huge gap where the young people are able to really churn up new products, etc. They could fail quickly and move on stuff. The old generation had this challenge that saying that, hey, we used to take 1 year to build a product like this, so we would go very methodical, etc. So it was a skills retraining. I think Pradeep already mentioned it's about unlearning and relearning and things like that. So what is important is try to stay abreast on all of these. So what we did from Panity perspective is we try to create some kind of quick talks and things like that, where people can familiarize themselves with the topics and conversations, and also created forums where they can meet with younger people can meet with old people, and they could exchange ideas. Because oftentimes what happens is we have seen people from older batches actually having a lot of business acumen and maturity on the and soft skills. However, the younger generation was quick to develop something. So when we patched up some things, uh, we did see some combinations where it worked beautifully. For example, I myself, about a decade ago, I partnered with a VP of engineering from a previous company who was much older, but then we put together and we built an amazing product, and it got acquired within the next 3-4 years. right? So I've seen this combination work. So what we try to do is try to pair people and offer some mentoring services, etc., from PAN8 USA. Even right now, I think we try to do it virtually. We have to see how effective it works, but due to the pandemic, we are not able to conduct most of those physical sessions that we used to do. But I seriously encourage everybody to actually try and talk to uh, various other network with other IITians, younger or older. If you're an entrepreneur, you could actually go invest in the company because the cost of failure is very small.
Coming to you, Anju, what would your advice be for an entrepreneur looking at edtech as a sector and both on the, maybe not necessarily on tech side, but also you
Yeah.
spoke about soft skills and so on.
Yeah.
So what would be your advice? Because there are lots of unicorns already there in the
Yeah.
space, and it seems to be a crowded space as well. So how do you, and what about people wanting to invest in this space?
So first, from an entrepreneur perspective, I'm a big fan. Sorry, go ahead, brother. Didn't mean to, Sushanta. Okay. I think one, from an entrepreneur perspective, nothing beats kind of practical experience. So this, again, is a great time. A lot of startups out there in this sector are looking for help, looking for people to work on specific areas, looking to work on tech, get projects, get internships with them, learn a little bit practically about the business. One, that's a great way to do it. Number two, I always tell people they always underestimate the benefit of talking to somebody who's already in this industry, and the alumni is a great way to connect. Reach out to your alums or even others, and just say, hey, I'm looking to work in this industry, want to understand more. Talk to some of the people at the unicorns that are your alums and kind of learn from them. I think those two things are really, really important to, one, understand without going out and doing a POC, without spending a lot of time and effort. If you have a specific good idea in mind, that's a great way to, one, validate whether what you're thinking is on the right path. Have you thought about the problem right? Building some skills along the way to understand what is it that you're really going to need to go to the next level to take it there. I think that is kind of really key from an entrepreneur perspective. And I'll say it again, nothing beats kind of practical experience and learning and talking to people who are already in the industry. Like you said, yes, it is a crowded space, but if you look at India and you look at what the need is out there, there is, I think, a tremendous need and a tremendous way we can continue to integrate technology and leverage its outreach in the business, do a better job at kind of matching skills. That's on the entrepreneur side. On the investor side, I think, again, like I said, this year there was a big spurt in startups that were in the field of bringing kind of coding to kids. I think another area that's really important is I said about soft skills. So I think from an investor perspective, again, it's really understanding what is out there in terms of the need. I think e-learning is still out there to stay. Getting the technology out and education and access out to a broader, beyond just the metros, is really out there. So that's kind of, quickly what my comments would be.
Yeah, coming to you, PG, you rightly said that deep tech is going to be, penetrate into different parts of both industry and consumer lives. But one of the challenges which deep tech entrepreneurs face, as I'm sure you would have seen that as well, is that they're limited by the understanding of the market. So deep tech, they're deep into technology, literally and figuratively. So their understanding and appreciation of the market is perhaps not as strong as it should be. So what is your advice to such entrepreneurs who have built a deep tech technology or an application and are sort of waiting for the people to line up and buy their products? Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, so Shanto, my view is that there is nothing like a non-tech startup. There is nothing like a tech startup. Okay, I think that is the point I'm trying to make, that it has to become ubiquitous. It has to get into each and every area. Ravi talked about social areas. If I look at social areas, recently we had the migrant crisis. The way the telecom networks played a role in that, the way the mobile phone played a role in that, we never even saw it. Okay, but that is what was actually helping in that particular crisis. We are looking at agriculture, and there are increasing amount of IoT that is getting installed in agri solutions, which will be used right at the bottom of the pyramid by crores of people. When you talk about disaster recovery, and you will be using drones for doing deliveries and so on. So the point I'm trying to make is that this has to become an underlying factor in every startup in whatever area that is there. One more area where I would like to sort of differ is I don't think there are any crowded markets. Okay. You were talking about education. In education, we had NIIT, which created a revolution. We had Educom, which created a revolution. We had a Byju's, which created a revolution. Okay, so every 10 years, there will be some fresh opportunity that will arise in each and every area. And so therefore, and those are the disruptions that are caused by startups. Those are the disruptions that are caused by companies that scale. So I think, it is important for people to look at that, see what is it that they can disrupt, and work on that particular thing with a new way of doing the entire thing. And I mean, I was talking about contactless manufacturing, but if I look at any area, if I look at my media area, VR, AR, films where you can decide the ending, are all going to be technology driven and are going to get embedded into different areas. If I look at banking and finance area, how do I deal with a faceless customer? There are going to be technologies that are going to come around that. So point I'm trying to make is that we have to treat it as a base, that technology has to be a base for whatever transformation that needs to be done in any specific area. One small thing I would just like to comment on, and that is that with all of this happening, I think what we need is a completely new area of tech ethics. We need to have data security. We need to have, laws to govern that. But that's a topic for another discussion. I think that tech ethics is going to become a very, very important thing.
Right, right. We are of course now running out a little bit of time. So Ravi, if you can quickly tell us what you spoke about two things. One is social entrepreneurship, as well as people starting out in tier 2, tier 3 cities, entrepreneurs coming from smaller cities. So what is your advice to them in both these areas? Uh, uh, how do they have a better chance of succeeding apart
Yeah.
from going?
Yeah, so let me quickly talk about those questions, answer those questions. So first of all, I think picking up from where I was saying that, I think it's a good time for us, all IITians, to look at doing something with startups. I think it's a very, very opportune time. There's no disparity between what's happening in the Valley versus India. There is differences, but there's also a difference that can be, overcome. Second thing is about the social thing that you talked about, and I think there is a lot of I think compartmentalization that people do. That I'm in the grahastha ashrama of mine. I'm doing tech startups in the Valley. When I get to my vanaprastha ashrama, I will do social entrepreneurship, and so on and so forth. So I think waiting to get into the new ashrama is not necessarily required. You guys have probably some of the best connections, the best knowledge of technology, the best understanding of the global markets. I think it's important for you to apply your minds, your skill sets, your resources, and uh, networks to actually solve some of the most pressing problems that we have here. And there are plenty of those opportunities. I know if you just speak to your classmate who is residing in India, I think there's lots of opportunities to do. So you can do both a tech startup, and you can also be involved in some capacity or the other to doing social. I think it's absolutely possible at this point in time, given all the technology that's available for us to be in communication and technology that we can put to work to solve some of these problems. The last thing, I think you asked about tier 2, tier 3. Yeah, so I think the reason they were looking to do that is because they were closest to the problems that they saw. It was not something that they had divined by sitting there in their offices in the metros or across the seas. It actually was where they actually were sitting inside the problem context, and they were able to therefore also design the solutions for them. And therefore, I think you will see more and more of these coming. And these are people not necessarily uh, 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 disconnected from what is happening with the rest of the startup world elsewhere in the metros. They understand it. They know how to employ technology and so on and so forth. So they're beginning to do a lot of that, and therefore they of course do need a much more concerted effort. And I think you will see that they know how to reach out, they know how to get connected to the right places so that they can solve these issues. So I think they have found that it is the place you have to be the closest to your customers, or closest to the demands, where your solutions are going to meet those problems, or your solutions are going to meet those problem statements. And I think that's the reason you see a lot of this happening. With the pandemic, a lot of people kind of decided to work from home, but what better than to actually work from home, the home where the parents are or the relatives are, and they're beginning to do all of that from there as well. I think one of them is Sridhar Vembu from Zoho, who's now moved back to the small city in Tamil Nadu, right? So I think that's the trend that you're beginning to see.
Right. So we move on to the questions, and we've got a few, and I hope that we'll have a few more. This one is a tough one, and the person hasn't given his name, but he says at times incubators at the institute have started as enablers, but over time become bottlenecks. Right? And um, uh, angel groups look at for startups to be validated at the incubator first, but the changing times and many available resources, a lot can be achieved outside the incubators too. How can we ensure early stage investors have the capability to assess the startups on their own and do not depend on validation by incubators? So, PG, you would like to take this up?
Yeah. So there are incubators and incubators. I've been associated with FITT, Sign. I've been associated with IMC Innovation Park. All of them nurture entrepreneurship. All of them ensure that companies out of these places grow. So perhaps the person who has asked this question is at the wrong incubator, but should look around. There are other incubators which can actually provide a fill-in.
Right. So I agree with you.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, I was also associated with Sign and currently associated with FITT. So yeah, I think don't necessarily they're evolving organizations, and I think the alumni can also help in making them more oriented towards the startups, and I think that is one place where alumni could play a role. The second part is that investors don't necessarily look at incubators for validation. Yes, that is one part, but one of the ways in which you could look at uh, you know looking at more startups is to look at some of the angel networks like Indian Angel Network and Lead Angels and others which are there, which don't necessarily depend on incubators for validation. Right. Anybody else would like to add something to that? Kiran, Ravi, Anju?
Yeah, Sushant, I'll add something to that. So I think when the incubator started out, it was like, the primary schools in the, places will have certain area ways in which they can actually give you the rudimentaries of building a startup and, the fundamentals, which is all fine. But as the students themselves become more sophisticated and more demanding and more, ambitious, just giving them this kind of support is not necessarily helpful. And is it not a good representation of how they evaluate this and present this to other people? Because obviously angel networks are looking for some kind of a validation done by the incubators. I don't think some of the incubators are in a position to do that because they are not staffed by the people who have been there, done that, or staffed by people who can appreciate the nuances of entrepreneurship as they're evolving. So I think the ecosystem may be moving much faster than what our incubators can actually provide validation for. So to bridge the gap, the best way to do it is to obviously get the angels to evaluate some of these directly rather than relying on the incubator managers to provide them
For
that
sure.
So the last question that is there is from Kalpen Shukla. Many of us know him from IIT Delhi and others know him from IIM Ahmedabad. Kalpen asked, do we still see fundamental difference to approach between US based vis-a-vis Indian investors taking calls, and except for tech startups? So PG, you go ahead.
I think it would be good if Kiran goes ahead first, and then I can give the Indian perspective.
Yeah. So I think in US it's actually very professional that way. So what happens is in US, what happens is if there is a customer traction, it's much easier to actually make that call, right? What happens is there a viable business here? Is that founding team trustworthy? Have they built something? It's like, it's more goes along how likely is the company going to succeed based on the parameters that they will have to sell to the US market. So I think I've always seen that most of the US based investors always
I
focus
just
on.
want to thank everybody on the panel. We'll probably get cut out at 1:30. So thank you, everyone. I'll also request you to put your email ID on the chat session so that people can get in touch with you if they wish to. And go ahead, Kiran, till another 1.5 minutes.
Okay,
And,
sounds good.
and you probably won't have the word here, but let's see.
So the way it works is very different. But actually what happens is in US, the incubation centers are actually a lot more evolved if you look at it. So what happens is they go through a lot of mentoring and a lot of grooming. And, as I was mentioning, over the decade and a half, we did try to do so many things within the Pan IIT. Then some of our friends from Pan IIT, actually, they have started another one. ID startups, I believe that's also going global right now. And they're going to set up something. So that's a nonprofit. So if you guys want something like, where you have reputable IITians guiding you, mentoring you, coaching you, go for it. That's going to, they're all great guys from Pan IIT.
Thanks, Kiran. Last
So,
30
so
seconds. Last 30
yeah, so
seconds.
in India, the only difference which is there is that we are very afraid of taking early technology calls. Okay. So we want to see something has worked somewhere else and so on. And, there is a POC, there should be a market, there should be a beta customer. And for some of these things, actually the cycles may be longer and products may not be there. And that is the area where there is a big gap.
There is
And
a
then
gap.
money which is available for
But
those.
otherwise, I don't see much of a gap. Maybe in a way, Indian investors are a little more risk averse than the US ones. Well, probably that's what I would say.
Yeah,
So,
I would agree.
Absolutely.
thank you very much. Thank you, Anju, Ravi, Kiran, and of course, PG. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.